Texas football. It's time for the Sunday night live stream. I'm Bobby Burton, alongside, CJ Vogel up top, Rod B in the middle, Jerry Hamilton down below. Guys, welcome in. Jerry's. I thought you were doing the horns down there, Rod.
No. Jerry.
He's
no
doing the Jerry deal.
No. Never. No.
Oh, boy. Hey, we got some news and notes to bring to you tonight. A couple of things have happened. Jerry, you were at a 7-on-7 tournament this weekend. CJ, you released some news and notes. But first, one of the Longhorns' targets off the board, an offensive lineman out of Cypress Ridgeland, goes to the bad guys up in north of the border. Jerry, you want to take that one?
Yeah. It's Ryan Foje, as CJ kind of hinted at that on ontexasfootball.com over the weekend, that Oklahoma was looking good there. I've been by the school about 3 weeks ago, and Oklahoma was his first offer, and that did have meaning to Ryan for sure. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was 6'4", 230 pounds on JV as a sophomore playing DN, and now he's 6'5", closing on 285 as a big-time, I think, right tackle prospect. I think he's a top 100 kid in the country long-term. If not, people ranking need to get out of the business or I need to get out of the business. He's very talented. That was a good early get for Oklahoma. I think they're being aggressive in this cycle, trying to get guys from Texas on board, knowing that Texas plays the longer game. And even in some circumstances, A&M is playing the longer game with some of these kids. Interesting, he plays for Lonnie Madison, former Texas A&M defensive lineman over at Bridgeland, but he's not one to push a kid to a school, anything like that. But Kyle Flood was by the school last Thursday at Bridgeland. So we'll see. I mean, we know how Texas is. They won't walk away from guys they think are very good. They'll keep recruiting him, but Bill Biedenbaugh offered him early before he was on the radar anywhere, and did a good job relationship building with him and his father.
You mentioned OU being aggressive, Jerry. Jonah Williams out of Galveston Ball apparently leaning to OU right now, in your opinion, or what's going on there? The big safety/baseball prospect as well.
I think that's where Oklahoma's really hitting this recruitment is the baseball angle. I think, look, if you look at it, if he ends up at Oklahoma, there'll be some references to Kyler Murray, Cody Thomas, guys from Texas that went up and played baseball and football at Oklahoma. We'll see how long this recruitment plays out. Obviously, Oklahoma's being aggressive right now with kids, especially in Texas. But we'll see if this one plays out into June. But Oklahoma's in the position that A&M and Texas wish they were in. The other thing with Oklahoma is they've been recruiting him as a box safety, even talked to him about wide receiver, which I mean, that gets him to tell a kid whatever he wants to hear, part of a recruitment. But they've talked to him about anything other than linebacker.
And Texas initially thought he might be a linebacker, if that's accurate.
Jeff Choate was recruiting him at linebacker, then Choate left. Texas moved him back to the safety spot. Blake Gideon obviously has been the area recruiter, but took over that recruitment. We'll see how much ground Texas can make up. Even if Williams made an early decision, I don't think Texas will back off.
CJ, you also had some news and notes over the weekend on the Texas team coming out of some early workouts for some of the young guys. Give folks a little understanding of what you saw and what you heard from talking to some folks around the program this weekend.
Yeah, early returns from a lot of these early enrollees. Very positive on the front of guys that are making an impact early. A couple names that have yet to be really, I guess, highlighted so far since their arrival. Ty Anthony Smith coming in with a workman-like mentality. He's a guy who, Jerry, you put a note up on the board as well about him. He's a guy that you talk to him, you see the effort that he puts into each workout. He's making headways right now amongst the freshmen. Wardell Mack, another name in that cornerback room. We talked about the defensive backs in this past cycle being one of the strengths of the class. Obviously, we expect it to be a strength of the team moving forward into future seasons as well. Wardell Mack's a guy that has really kind of shined a little bit. Kobe Black as well in that defensive back room. Very impressive because you look at him, and we've talked about this in the past, it doesn't look like he has really been through an extensive amount of work on his body yet. There's still a long way to go with his development physically for his name to be popping up as often as it is. Very encouraging. And then body transformation, something I want to hit on a little bit as well. Colin Simmons is up about 15 to 20 pounds, up to about 240 right now. And that was one of the biggest, not question marks, but one of those big things with him is if you could see his body get physically ready for the SEC Jerry and I saw him down in Orlando for the All-American game down there. It didn't look like he was close to 240, but it turns out that the nutritional aspect of things combined with his work ethic in the weight room is the biggest factor there. And then obviously Alex January is the other one I wanted to mention. Slimmed down about 10 pounds since arriving to campus, looking like he's carrying that weight just a little bit better than what he was as a senior in high school at Duncanville.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, like Ty Anthony Smith. I want to say something about Ty Anthony, a couple of things. One, he reminds me of linebackers that I've seen over the years in the state of Florida. You know, he's a small town guy, plays multiple sports, actually hurt his knee a sophomore year playing basketball, plays multiple sports right at a smaller school. When he gets to college, he blows up fast. That's what I expect from Ty Anthony. So CJ's report, that doesn't surprise me at all. I'll tell you the other thing about Ty Anthony for the Texas fans to remember as he progresses throughout his career. He's a guy that they would snap the ball to. They'd hand him the ball off. He'd play wide receiver at various points. He'd play safety. He'd play linebacker. Those guys like that can take in a lot of information and put it to use immediately. If Quandre Diggs played everywhere in high school. Earl Thomas played everywhere in high school. You get these small town guys. I'm sorry, Quandre, you were in 4A, right? Same as Friendswood, who owns Angleton, by the way. But that's another discussion for Q. But these small school guys, you know, if you can put a lot on their plate and they can execute it, those guys tend to learn really quick at the next level. It tells you they have a high football IQ.
Yep.
I love it. All right. Hey, Rod, we're going to get to you next. And our conversation with Rod's going to be a little bit different. Rod, you're getting your wisdom teeth taken out tomorrow, my man.
Yes, sir. Get them taken out. I'm not looking forward to it.
We need to know if there's any doctors on board, because here's Rod's next conundrum. He has to get cleared by the doctor so he can go to the Super Bowl next Sunday.
Yeah.
He's got a ticket, my man. You got to get cleared from a doctor. If there's any doctors, please just
yes. Because if I'm having the surgery on Monday, I basically got to get a doctor to clear me to fly out on Friday because my flight will leave on Friday. I got a ride. I got everything. And I imagine if I could fly out on Sunday, it would make it a whole lot better, but I ain't that big time. So I got a ride. We just got to pray that I got a doctor who's confident in his abilities and confident in my ability to heal, and that he's going, oh, man, you'll be good. So I'm praying that it's going to happen. And if not, I'm going to be heartbroken.
I once rode a Greyhound bus from New York City to Houston. I don't suggest that ride, Rod. I'll say
oh, now you're old. Now, Jerry.
Super Bowl that bad.
Game
it's only 19 hours.
You could leave Tuesday morning and be there, you know?
Jerry, why'd you put that in my head?
Now your jaws are going to be as big as the Sphere in Las Vegas. That's
Jerry, why would you put that? My wife is going, dude, I'm going to tell her Jerry made me come up with this idea that I could take the Greyhound. I could take the bus all the way out there and be just fine.
Don't do it, Rod.
Don't do it.
It might be worth it to do the live stream.
Hey, I got to say one other thing. Rod, one of your best friends or good friends from school, Kyle Shanahan, is going to be coaching in that game. Congratulations to the Longhorn. He is going to be leading the 49ers. And then also, obviously, on the other side, Kansas City Chiefs. Alex Okafor used to be a Kansas City Chief, but Charles Omenihu was going to play for the Chiefs, but tore his ACL in that game last weekend. Had a big game, actually, in the AFC title game. But a couple of Longhorns representing the university there at the biggest game in the world. Who do you got in that game, Rod? I mean, I know you're a little bit of a pro football fan too. I know you're rooting for the 49ers.
I'm rooting for my boy Shannon. I'm rooting for the 49ers. My wife, their whole family of 49ers fans. Guys, it's almost impossible to pick against Patrick Mahomes. That's just the reality of it. I mean, this guy, he's 3-0, I believe, as an underdog in the playoffs. He's 9-3 as an underdog. I think he's still an underdog right now. I don't pick against Patrick Mahomes very often, and every time I do, it makes me look stupid. But I'm hoping the 49ers win, so I'm rooting on them. But I just don't pick against Patrick Mahomes. That's just not a smart thing to do these days.
and hey, by the way, Richard Hightower also on that staff, right, with the 49ers.
He's now I think he's with the Bears. He used to be on that staff.
He is with the Bears.
And he moved on. Remember, he was coaching the East-West Shrine game.
Yes, he was head coach.
That's right.
So that was the Bears. Yeah, that was big. That was big for him because because my man Richard Hightower started out with Shano and kind of rose through the ranks with him, and now he's kind of moved on doing his own thing. So congrats to him too. It's a big move for him.
All right, before we get going, we're going to take some questions tonight, have a little conversation about Texas football recruiting. We're going to talk a little basketball, maybe, Jerry and CJ.
It's okay now. Got a quad 1 win on the road. We can hit that.
Hey,
Yep.
nice.
Hey, those are big. But first, I want to say thanks to our sponsor tonight. Our sponsor, TexasElectricityRatings.com. For those of y'all still living in Texas and in the major cities with deregulated electricity like Dallas and Houston, you understand that deregulation, the market can be confusing. Texas Electricity Ratings is a shopping website that lets you compare prices, read customer reviews, and find a good electricity plan that fits your needs. It also filters out a lot of the gimmicky plans on websites like Power to Choose that simply trick customers into expensive bills. So if you're in the market for a new electricity plan, shop TexasElectricityRatings.com. Use /OTF for all your electricity needs. That's TexasElectricityRatings.com /OTF for all your electricity needs. And they say hook them to the Longhorn fan base. Hey, guys, we'll start taking some conversation here, but I do want to get to the basketball team yesterday. CJ, you and Jerry, I know both were trading some texts back and forth privately that I was on. What did y'all think? Tell fans what y'all thought of that game yesterday and what it meant for the Longhorns.
Yeah, a huge win for the Texas Longhorns. They're, people like before the last couple, after the last couple of losses, I think people were wondering, is Texas a tournament team? If you look at NCAA.net, they were 39 before that game. They're 32 after the quad 1 win. Texas is 4-4 in quad 1 games, and they have mostly quad 1 games left. So I think you can actually get in the NCAA tournament a game under 500 in this league this year. It's very rare, but I do think it's going to be possible because there's going to be so many quad 1 Big 12 teams. Now, with that being said, if Texas can beat Iowa State, another quad 1 team at home Tuesday night, then they have West Virginia coming to town. If you can get that Iowa State game and you can get that West Virginia game, you've then got 3 wins in a row when you head into U of H, which is a tough matchup for Texas because U of H plays bully ball, and that's not what Texas' strength is. But that game in itself, look, as long as Texas plays through Disu and Asmus on offense, and everybody is complimentary off of those two, Texas can score 75-plus points on the road or neutral in talent-neutralized games. And if you can do that, you have a chance to win. Defensively, the rebound in the basketball, they're not going to be a great defensive team, not with 6' and 5'11" guards starting. You have to have elite rim protection behind that to be a good defensive team. But what they can do is if they rebound the ball well enough, then they can play good enough defense and they can limit second chance points. This team can score the basketball. They're 38% from 3. They're a good free throw shooting team. They'll probably be around 75% for the season. They have a great 2-man game with Disu and Asmus, which creates optimal space. I think playing the 3-guard lineup and certain Kendall Weaver defensively and that energy, he's got a lot of those same traits that Jabari Rice and Roshan Johnson have as a human being, as an athlete. And the more that guy plays, the more he impacts winning in ways that may not show up in the box score, but that guy's going to be big as the season goes on because that means he can guard an opponent's best guard, and you don't have to ask Tyrese Hunter or Asmus to do that all the time. And that's an ideal situation for Texas. They're finding the pieces right now. They're putting the puzzle together. Can they win enough of these games against quad 1s to get to like a 5, 6, 7 seed? It's not out of the question. Right now, I think they're hovering around that 8 to 10 seed.
Yeah, 3-2 out of the last 5 games against top 25 teams. I mean, from what we were discussing about this team midway through the year, it didn't feel like that was going to be a possibility. I'll be quick here, but I wanted to just touch on, it feels like they found that core lineup for the stretch, down the stretch in crunch time. I mean, obviously, Max Asmus, catching fire, being one of those microwave-like players in which he can heat up at any time. 13 points in the final 3.5 minutes, went on an 11-0 run to really put that game out of reach. It didn't necessarily feel like Texas had that, kind of momentum in late in games previously in the season. You're seeing recently, the last time they played Houston, obviously eliminated a 12-point deficit in the second half. Things kind of fell apart late, obviously, in overtime, but against a good team like Houston and then carrying it over again to TCU, it's nice to see that in the second half, you're going to know that this team will be able to score and maintain, really competitive possessions against quad one teams as we were talking about. That's encouraging to me, and I think they're really piecing that together as we move forward.
Where are they sitting, guys, right now on the NCAA bubble?
They're in
right now, or are they?
They're in, Bobby. They were in. Even Joe Lunardi had them last 4 bye before the win at TCU. They're comfortably in right now. But look, that can change in the Big 12. I mean, turn around and lose to Iowa State Tuesday night. You know, they shouldn't lose to West Virginia at home. But look, they've been a bad home team, better on the road this year.
Yeah, bizarre.
And I think it's perfect motivation right now to go win home games, by the way. I think this TCU win, I think they're still going to be an up and down team this season because some of the parts, they don't necessarily mix and match well. If you can get Disu in early foul trouble against Texas has a very tough time.
Yes.
Got it. Fair enough. All right. Hey, I got to say this real quick. I don't know if Matt, our producer, has it yet. He says he does have it. We're talking about men's basketball. Somebody wrote in the chat, hey, what about the women's basketball team winning at Baylor over the weekend? I talked to Bob Ballou, the news anchor in Austin, and he said he would allow me to run this post-game little rant that Vic Schaefer went on after beating the Baylor Bears this weekend. Here's Bob Ballou and interviewing Vic Schaefer after that game.
We have to get our kids up every night because somebody's trying to whip your butt. Obviously for Baylor, they said it all week. They were going to send us out the right way, send us off to the SEC. It was personal. It goes on and on. But here's the thing. You better be careful when you start talking about owning the state. You better be careful. And I don't think they own the state since we've been in Austin. So there you got it.
You overcame a lot tonight. I'm sure your heart stopped a couple times when Aaliyah went down, Madison hobbles off. What did it take to overcome, not the injuries, as much as it did just this crowd, this atmosphere, and what Baylor can do to get this win tonight?
It's toughness, man. Like these kids are, what they're going through, dealing with. Deanna Gaston, not 60%. She's not ready. Tried to give us some help, did tonight. Madison Booker ain't practiced in 5 days. I mean, unbelievable. That kid's a monster. If that ain't the best freshman in the country, I don't know who is. For what she's having to do for our team, run the point, score, assist, defend. The kid's unbelievable. I mean, that number 35 might be as good as the one they've had here before, back when he was a freshman. I mean, she is special.
All right. Good stuff there, Matt. Thanks for putting that up for us. Hey, you think I got a couple questions. He's invoking the Kevin Durant naming.
Yeah, that was bold.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The second question I got for you, Rod Babers, is would you want to play for him?
I love that you brought that question. That's a great question because I remember telling on our morning show, E. Hogan, I remember saying, I don't know if anybody on the 40 acres can give a better pep talk, pregame speech, halftime speech than Vic Schaefer. I'm sure there's some in the running, but I can't imagine who would come with more passion, right, than a guy like Vic Schaefer, and who would challenge you more than Coach Schaefer. I'm with you. I love to play, but he is all passion, man. We wears it on his sleeve. I will say that about Coach Schaefer. And guys, they just beat number 2 in the country. All right, just beat K-State, number 2 in the country. To do what they've done after losing Roy Harmon, it is truly extraordinary. Because guys, it's like losing Quinn Ewers. It's like losing your starting quarterback.
Losing TJ Ford.
Exactly. That's like losing your best player.
Yeah.
And then still be able to reinvent yourself as a team. That's extraordinary. That's a credit to the team and the ladies, but also to Coach Schaefer too.
By the way, that's probably the only time Kim Mulkey's ever cheered for Texas.
Gary, you cannot get one-liners, man. You can't stop them. You can only hope to get them. Hey, look, we've got a couple questions here that I want to get to. Honey Badger, how deep into the spring do you think we will know if we have a DT stud ready to roll or work the portal like heck? They'll be working back channels like heck, all that other stuff, but you're not going to know until April 15th at the very earliest. Because you can have all these other things you think might be happening, but until that player puts his name in the portal, there's good luck.
Yeah,
is what it is. So it's not just March, mid-February, March, We won't know 100% for sure that something's going to break or the dam's going to break in that regard until April 15th, in my opinion. Now, they can enter the portal earlier than that, but the portal won't open until then. That's my take. All right, got a couple of questions here. This one from Fresh Prince. It seems a lot of Mac and Charlie Strong era players have gone into coaching in Texas high school football. Peter Jenkins at Skyline, Ben Wells at Aldine Nimitz, Kenny Harrison. He may have been Makovic, right, Jerry? Who are some others? Will it help recruiting? Well, there's a linebacker coach down at Mady Creek that you saw today, right? That has a guy.
Yeah, by the way, Kenny Harrison played for that team of the Sugar Bowl shirt that CJ wears, the 95 Texas.
Before CJ was born, by the way.
On that team.
Yeah, that's true.
No, Kosi Okpala, the 2026 linebacker at Made Creek. I talked to him today at a 7-on-7 event. And I do want to talk about Keoti Armstrong, which I talked to and watched today, which he gives me – I mean, I don't want to say yet. He gives me some big time vibes. The tight end from Georgia now in the NFL, Darnell Washington, is what you could see him being if he maximizes his talent. But yeah, I asked Apollo today about Rashad Bobineau and what he tells him about Texas. This is a 2026 linebacker who Texas offered. Jeff Banks and Sark were at the school last week. I think Bobineau put a picture on social media. But yeah, Bobineau's another one. I'll tell you what then. Aaron Bobineau is on the DeSoto staff as he may be the D coordinator of the DeSoto. If not, he's a linebackers coach, but there are a number of guys. I'm sure there's some others, Rod, if we start thinking about it, that are coaching in high school football. CJ may have a couple as well. Oh, I mean, look, how about this? Shane Rink. I mean, that's before. Classic, that's before. But yeah, it's guys that played for Mac.
Isn't it De La Torre coaching too?
De La Torre is coaching. That's right.
Wiley East, and then his brother's up at Denton Ryan.
Yep. Dude, we should come with a master list. That's a great question, though. We should come with a master list because I'm with you. I didn't think about it, but you're right. Now that I'm running through the names, there are quite a bit of
up at Marlin as well.
Yeah.
Does Cedric Griffin just coach track, or does he coach football as well?
That's a good question. I don't know. Said just coaching track. That's a good question. Yeah.
I think he's just doing track right now.
Okay.
That was my understanding. I did want to mention this, that when you start talking about guys and what they're doing nowadays, there is no more appropriate job than what Anthony Wheeler does he's a cop for the Dallas Police Department.
Yeah.
And he looks like a cop, man. You look at him and he is built like, I don't think I want to run that red light.
Hey, by the way, Yarborough, great call. Jermaine Anderson's D coordinator, Texas City, his alma mater.
Oh, that's a good one. I played with Jermaine Anderson. Yeah, the Texas City foe, right?
Yep.
That group. I remember that group.
Irvisville. Can you name it? Irvisville, Tyrone Jones.
Everett Rawls.
There we go. Everett Rawls.
Yeah, man. That was a good group.
That team.
Yeah,
hey, John Adams is right. Anthony Wheeler's former nickname is Prison. Charlie Strong would even call him 45 or Prison or whoever.
I've never seen a guy that looked like more appropriate for his job. I'll just put it that way. And I'm not talking about NFL players, but I'm talking about layman. Jeez. But hey, football genius question. Why do y'all think Jaylen Ford is dropping in the ranks at his position? I'm reading he is a 5th to 8th prospect at linebacker. What do y'all make of that? Anybody have a thought on that, Rod?
It's number one. It's not just Jaylen Ford. It's and I don't know why, by the way, off-ball linebacker period, which is crazy. You look at, the teams, the final 4 teams in the NFL playoffs, and you kind of look at the team, like what they emphasized in terms of roster construction. Off-ball linebacker for both of those teams, really, really good, right? For what you talk about the Ravens with Roquan Smith, and when you talk about the 49ers with Greenlaw and Fred Warner. I mean, off-ball linebacker is really important these days, and yet it's not considered a premium, what they call a premium position. So naturally, if it's not a premium position, it gets pushed down. The premium positions are drafted higher. Quarterback, you're now wide receivers 1, tackle, edge rusher. Those are premium positions. But I'll tell you, now you're starting to see some teams emphasize what aren't premium positions, like tight end, like off-ball linebacker. And if you start studying the NFL, hell, all the really good teams do have really elite players at those kind of non-premium positions too. Off-ball linebacker, tight end, into D-tackle. I went over that when we talk about football theory with Coach Shipley. So yeah, it's less about Jaylen Ford and more about the position overall. But yeah, right now he's considered about the fifth best off-ball linebacker. I think he's the best coverage off-ball linebacker. And trust me, when it comes to making it for a roster, which he will, but it comes to playing early, that matters in today's NFL because it's a pass-first league.
That's not.
I think testing is going to be huge for him too. I think some people are expecting him to not put up great testing times.
He's not a freak athlete. He's not a freak. He's going. I mean, I'm not trying to insult Jaylen Ford. I think he's a hell of a player, but he's not considered a freak athlete.
Right.
He's considered a high IQ, cerebral athlete, and that's why he diagnoses plays quicker, and that's why he may get there. But it was not when you watch him on film, it doesn't jump off that he made some freakish athletic play. It's more about him as a chess master, as a football player, diagnosing plays, which I think he's excellent. And by the way, guys, that's how you end up being a 9-10-year NFL veteran, is the cerebral aspect, because your athletic freakishness will dissipate over the years. At about 3 or 4 years, you're not going to be the athletic freak out there with the rest of them freaks. That's just the way the NFL works. The guys who play as veterans and end up playing 8 to 10 years in the league, those are the guys who learn they learn how to be students of the game. And I think Jaylen Ford's light years ahead of everyone when it comes to being a student of the game.
I'm going to add this, because I went to several media availabilities this year where Jaylen was available.
Mm-hmm.
Takes the sport extraordinarily seriously, takes his work within that weight room and within that program extraordinarily seriously. So he may be a 5th to 8th linebacker, whatever. He's going to maximize whatever it is he does.
He's on the Roschon Johnson path.
He's what?
He's on the Roschon Johnson path.
It's very simple. Very
I think it starts when he first came to Texas. He was the lowest rated commit in that class. He was a guy that had to previously commit to Utah, an out-of-state school, before a lot of schools really started getting him the interest late in that cycle as well. So it's always that chip on the shoulder that obviously grew into a plate of chips, basically, a big bowl up there. It wasn't just one. It kind of built up over a while, and we're seeing it, really reap the benefits of being that hard worker there.
Yeah, CJ, I to try to explain to people what I'm talking about, because you witnessed it there. You were in some press conferences as well. His ethos, or his way of being, was categorically different than just about every other players that would walk through there. You agree with that?
Yeah, certainly. I think, when you get these high prospects and, you expect greatness from them right away, there's a little bit of a different path that you expect for guys kind of in that 3-star lower category of the rankings. And for Ford specifically, I thought he really bought into that. I need to come to Texas. I need to earn everything that I get, because there's no guarantee that I will ever see the field. And I think we saw that his entire time here. You talk about the Roschon Johnsons, the Bijans, the guys that really set the standard. He carried that in 2023. One of my favorite stories from the season as well is during one of those player media availabilities, he actually pulled out a little sports trading card of Dick Butkus. He had it up in his wallet, and he's sitting there thinking, if there's one guy that I am going to model my game around. It was more about the Butkus Award for the best linebacker in the country. He's like, I stare at this every day because that's what I strive to be. I strive to be the best linebacker in the country. I strive to be the guy that I can look at, my teammates can rely on, and I can set the standard and be an example for this program. And as you mentioned, I thought he's done a tremendous job, but it started from the very beginning, and that mindset's only going to further his career in the NFL the minute that he gets there.
I agree. I think his mindset is what I was getting at. Just the way he carried himself. I mean, you could tell at Big 12 media days, early in the season, then throughout the year, every time he met with the media, he was that kind of guy. Hey, I want to say this, though, and that leads us to a good question here. William Lawler, look for Anthony Hill to be a leader on defense. Is that who we think is going to be the leader on defense? Is it going to be Barron Sorrell? Is Johnny the leader type? I mean, what do y'all think? Who's going to be the leader on defense?
There's an underrated name that we probably haven't talked a whole lot about, but Mo Blackwell as well. He's one comes from a very good program up in Arlington Martin. He's a guy that is now one of the older statesmen in the room. You know, he's a guy that's been around. He's been in the system for a while. He's expected to be a contributor and be on the field pretty often this upcoming season. Behind the scenes, that's a name that I've heard pretty often in terms of leading workouts in winter conditioning so far, as well as Barron Sorrell.
Usually the best leaders make plays, a lot of plays, though. And that, you know, David Benda has been a guy that's moved up the ranks. Hill is obviously maybe the best, most talented defensive player. Rod, what do you think on this? Who do you think needs to step up?
I may be a little biased, but I think it's going to come from the secondary. I think Makuba's going to come in as a guy who's a proven veteran that's already done it at a really high level with a big time program. I think he can come in being a leader. And I was talking, CJ was there. We did our third Longhorn broadcast, talked to Gavin Holmes, and Gavin Holmes, I was talking about, hey, which one of the DBs are talking? Like, which one of these guys are being vocal about their leadership? And he talked about Makuba and talked about Jadae Barron. I think that's where the leadership should come from. Those guys have seen a lot of football. Anthony Hill's just uber talented, and he wants to be a leader, right? Talking to that young man, this is a guy that wants that burden.
Yeah,
and he's looking forward to that burden. You're talking to some of these young guys, and you can tell they can't wait to be a leader. A young Colin Simmons, he can't wait. Right, he's patiently waiting his turn, but he can't wait to be leader. And I remember thinking to myself, right, when I was sitting behind my Quentin Jammer and Ahmad Brooks in that room, and thinking to myself, hey, one day this is gonna be my DB room. It's gonna be my DB room. I'm gonna set the standard. I'll be the one to break us down in the huddles. I'll be the one that has to organize all the off-season workouts for the players. It's gonna be my DB room. We're gonna play to the standard that I decide. And I mean, there is a certain pride with that. And I do think, Jaylen Ford was one of those guys. I think kind of passed that down. There's a lineage to it. And yeah, I think the secondary, I want to see Makuba. I want to see Jadae Barron. You guys have seen a lot of football. I want to see those guys step up and challenge their peers and be vocal leaders, but also be the guys that obviously you got to lead by example. As Bobby said, nobody's going to listen to you being a leader if you don't ball out. Then you get laughed at. I'm telling you that straight up. Those guys, man, they get laughed at. The guys who are talking a lot, but they're not on the field performing. Nah, man, we can't have that. All right. You're going to talk a lot, then you need to be out there on the field leading by example. That's the way it breaks out, and that's the way it goes down on the team. So your best players, they almost have to be your leaders. And when they're not, that's when you don't have the player-led team you need.
To Rod's point, Anthony Hill definitely wants to be a leader. Look, he comes from a program where they put leadership on their top players. Denton Ryan, a lot of deep playoff runs, right? That's the one thing they do so great. We talked about Alex De La Torre. His father, Aaron, obviously is on that staff, but high up on that staff. But they put leadership on those guys there. And so Anthony Hill's been a leader of a program with expectations. So it's not new for him. It's different, but it's not new. And I think he relishes the opportunity at Texas.
Jerry, I want to stay with you real quick because you had mentioned Keody Armstrong out of Jasper and said that you had a chance to sit down and talk with him a little bit. I saw some photos on TexasFootball.com, the website that you posted up there today with your little interview of him. Give people the takeaway from that for you? This is one of the nation's top tight end prospects.
Oh, yeah. So first I'll start with the prospect, Keody, the prospect. He's averaging about 14-9 in basketball right now, but he's not really – it's not what he does, right? He's 6'5" and change, 250, 248, 250 right now. And I'm going to throw out the term Darnell Washington, who's a little bit taller, an inch and a half taller. But Darnell Washington, similar athletes, and Darnell Washington being a high-level blocker at the University of Georgia, also an underrated pass catcher, third-round pick in the NFL draft. I think college coaches, any Alabama, everybody's going to Jasper to see this guy. And I think they all see that inch and a half shorter version of Darnell Washington, that upside in him. So as a prospect, you're talking 10.5-inch hands, over 80-inch wingspan. He's got all of it, and he's a smooth mover on the football field. And he's still raw. He's learning the position. He's learning the game. He's not a refined route runner at all. So anybody that watches his tape, that's not what he is right now. And that's what gives him such a high ceiling. My takeaway is I think Texas is the favorite for him right now. And I don't think it's just because Ty Anthony Smith flipped from A&M to Texas. Ty Anthony's told him he thinks he made a great decision since he's been in Austin. Keody had a chance to spend some time with him at the January 20th Junior Day. I think it's also the offensive scheme with the tight end position. I mean, look, young tight ends, especially in Texas, are going to really, identify with how Texas uses the tight ends. And as great as I think the Sark used JT Sanders, I think Nyblack's going to take it to another level next year because people are going to see this guy racing down the freaking field. So that is part of it as well. It's Ty Anthony. It's the scheme. I think Coyotes, it likes Austin a little bit. I think he likes that too. That's a vibe I got. But I think Texas is in a pretty good spot. He's scheduled to make an unofficial visit March 22nd when his 7-on-7 team makes an unofficial visit to Texas before they play in a tournament in the Austin area, March 23rd, 24th. I think that's also when Brandon Brown, the 4-star D tackle out of Melbourne O'Galley, will visit Austin is that same weekend when his 7-on-7 team, Cali Power, is in the Austin area for a 7-on-7 tournament.
That's interesting because that's some good recruiting scoop there. I didn't know about Brandon Brown. Hey, I want to bring you back around and to have you and CJ just stick with recruiting here, Jerry. Do you guys think that OU, and this is from Stoneman, do you guys think that OU making an early push like they did with Ryan Foji, committed to the Sooners today, could be related to a completely new O-line, all 5 new starters, a new QB, Dylan Gabriel off to Oregon, Jackson Arnold having to start now, and all of that could be leading to a rough start for them in the SEC. Therefore, they want to get guys in the boat and then just try to hang on to them. Do you think that's part of what they're doing here, CJ or Jerry?
I think it certainly plays into an aspect of it. I think right now a lot of it falls into the position coaches of really maintaining and creating really strong relationships early on in this cycle. OU had to replace both their defensive coordinator and their offensive coordinator left from Mississippi State. So I'm thinking a lot of that, not pressure, but kind of push came from the relationships from the position coaches to make sure that, hey, if we're not in an early position, I can't fall back on a guy coming in over my shoulder that's not Brent Venables to help me with this recruitment. It's got to be more on me. We're seeing it a little bit more. I think Jerry mentioned it earlier in the video. I'll let him speak on it a bit, but they're being more aggressive because there's, a window there for them to be. A&M still figuring things out, and Texas right now is kind of in that spot where they can sit back and really trust their evaluations and see how things progress. Because of their on-field success, it allows them that more time to kind of see exactly who they want before going in and allowing that green light to be lit for these prospects to join the class.
Look, I'm going to say this from an Oklahoma perspective. If I'm on Oklahoma staff and I'm recruiting in Texas, I'm going to be very aggressive on guys we think we're in a decent to good position with, because we know if you're Oklahoma – that Sark is playing the long game in recruiting, right? And to CJ's point, A&M's, they tried to get kids on campus early in January to at least get in the door with those guys, introduce those guys to their new staff. But it's more Texas OU for me right now. Everybody knows that Sark is very patient recruiting, and it works beautifully for him and has 3 straight classes and will a 4th straight class. There's a lot of good players out there. But if you're Oklahoma, you're absolutely dumb if you're not going in hard after guys you think you can get right now, knowing there's 10, 11, 12 really good offensive line prospects in the state. And there's a guy like John Mills, who I talked to today from San Francisco, who Texas loves, is going to come in and make an official visit in June. But so Sark, Texas, Flood, they're playing this long game in recruiting. So how do you combat that if you're Oklahoma? You go try to get 2 or 3 or 4 guys in the boat that you think you can that are really good players. You're not taking reaches. You're not taking reaches in the state this year. There's too much talent in the state of Texas, especially in the offensive line this year. But I think what Oklahoma's doing is absolutely correct with their strategy right now.
All right, one last recruiting question, and then we'll get to some more. We have some super chats on the team and stuff that I want to get to. KD35, Ohio State leaning Devin Sanchez, and then offered today. He's a number 1 ranked cornerback in the country, I believe. Do you think that those 2 commitments actually helps Texas now with Dorian Brew, the cornerback out of Conroe? CJ, I see you shaking your head yes.
Yeah, from a very simple perspective of if you're Terry Joseph, you can go up and say, hey, we've yet to take a cornerback because you're atop of our board. There's 2 other guys that Ohio State has in the class now, albeit very talented, 2 5-star guys. You can't say that if you're Ohio State. And that's kind of the biggest threat right now to Texas. We mentioned the January 24th date that we were kind of monitoring where he thought a potential commitment could have come. At the time, it would have been to Ohio State. But Texas did a tremendous job on the January 20th junior day, keeping him behind a little bit, getting more face-to-face time with Dorian Brew, and really just pitching to him, hey, come stick home, come play for us. We're building something nice going into the SEC. And plus, we're turning around what had been kind of a sluggish defensive back room and got into rooms that now you expect to see NFL talent year in and year out. So right now, it certainly helps Texas from the side of saying, if you're top 2 right now with Texas and Ohio State, there's no easier sign to point to really and say, hey, you're our number 1 100%. Come play for us. Come stay home. Be a part of something special here.
Jerry, you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think him backing off that January 24th commitment date, obviously he was going to Ohio State if he committed at that point in time. There was no question. But with him backing off that date, that was great news for Texas. Texas has proven they're all in on him. So I think this is a longer game recruitment now, and I think that those always work to Sarkisian's favor, especially as early as Ohio State's getting guys in the boat right now.
Yeah, Texas has seen them 3 times in the last month, whether it be on the road or in campus. It's building up, and like you said, it's working out in their favor as this one continues to go.
This is going to be one for Rod here, and I don't know because Rod likes to do the deep dives on where everybody comes from. If y'all didn't get a chance, by the way, to see Jerry and CJ talk over the weekend about the recruiting heat map, y'all should definitely check that out. Matt, our producer, did a great job with that. CJ and Jerry did a great job as well, filling in the blanks. Here's from O'Doyle Rules. Here's a Super Bowl stat for you. 5 starters in the Super Bowl on offense, defense are from DFW high schools. Rasheed Rice, Nick Bolton, that's the linebacker that went to the zoo, right? Yep. Omenahu is out. Then Brendel and Gibson as well.
I've got something on Gibson. I'm going to start.
Wow. Gibson,
we had at Deion Sanders' Prime 21 camp, his junior year, and he was tiny, 5'9", 155. But I'll back it up to this day. He was the best freaking football player that day on the field. His ball skills, his instincts, just understanding how to play the ball. It's just so good in the return game. Everything he does, pure ass football player. That guy went to SFA. Nobody wanted him. And to me, to this day, I'm still shocked how under-recruited he was. That guy is a freaking player.
Ball don't lie, right?
Brendel was an offensive lineman, Rod, offensive lineman out of Plano East that went in and played I think he's a 4-year starter for UCLA as well. Yeah. So all of those guys, not the highest rated. I mean, who's the highest rated guy there? Omenahu?
Maybe.
Nick Bolton was went to Missouri, right? Was similar to Jaylen Ford, right? I mean, limited Power 5 offers, super instinctive. Now he's got a powerful frame and body type right out of Frisco, but a similar recruit to Jaylen Ford coming out of high school.
All right. This was Justin Yarbrough. We've been talking about guys needing to gain weight in the offseason. What are some realistic goals for the guys on the D-line and guys like Cedric Baxter, CJ Baxter, and Mo Blackwell? Hey, Rod, you saw and talked with CJ Baxter earlier this year after the Sugar Bowl. Okay, what were some of the takeaways you had for him and where you thought he might end up? And then we'll talk about the other guys in a second.
Well, man, just he's first of all, his body wise, just his body type. He's long range. He got a great frame. I mean, honestly, he looks like he could add good 10 pounds and it really wouldn't affect his performance at all. I mean, I was shocked actually at how big he was and his frame. But once he puts on a little bit of armor, 10, 12 pounds, I mean, he's going to be a force. In terms of his maturity, I was blown away, frankly. Young man is mature beyond his years. He talked about how he came there just to learn from, the running backs in that room, that he was not thinking about starting when he first got there. That wasn't his goal. His goal was to learn as much, soak up as much information as he could. He's a young man who talks about, how team oriented, things are and how team oriented he is. He's very unselfish as a running back. He listens to Adele, I believe. That was weird before the game. That's probably my only knock. That's my only knock on like how you jam Adele before the games. But And man, he's a very mature young man. I mean, like I said, mature beyond his years. And I do think that, he won the starting job this year as a freshman. I think he'll be your bell cow next year, but it'll be a complimentary run backfield with Jaden Blue and Cedric Baxter, given hopefully nobody getting injured. That'll be the bulk of your backfield and your touches for your running backs.
I want to share this story on Cedric Baxter. I shared this coming out of high school, but we had 8,000 people on here back then. Now we have over 36,000. But I'll never forget when I was at Edgewater High, and I went and I think we used the interview with him on Texas football, but he was injured. He had a minor hamstring pull. He could have played. They saved him for the playoffs because they had games they were going to win. But, 5-star running back, number one ranked running back in the country. What does he do that practice I was there? He was not on the sidelines having fun with his pods in, all that. He was in the huddle every single play, engaged in a practice, I believe, on a Tuesday afternoon. So 3 days before game day, a game he wasn't playing, he was engaged. He was making sure the backup running back knew where to line up on the pass pro plays. He was out there coaching, helping, being engaged. Guys like that are generally successful in this game long term. That are that way in high school.
Yep.
I love that story, Jerry. And I think it goes back to the type of players that they're recruiting right now at Texas, whether it be, stories like that in which they live and die and they breathe football, but also, I think that plays into how successful they've been for their high school teams and Texas recruiting and finding state champions as well. So it's a specific mold of prospects that this staff is targeting and obviously getting into class and onto campus that is really going to help keep Texas atop of what, we have seen this past season.
Good stuff, guys. All right, I want to talk about Mo Blackwell and those guys in a second and maybe what the D-line needs to get up to. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. The live stream tonight brought to you by our friends at Texas Electricity Ratings. For anyone out there shopping for electricity in the deregulated areas of Texas, TexasElectricityRatings.com is the place to find a great electricity plan for your household. For starters, it filters out the dangerous and gimmicky plans from providers that are all hat and no cattle when it comes to your monthly bill. You can shop by rate, but also by an average bill feature that actually takes into account seasonal usage to give you a real number and not just a placeholder. So if you're looking for a new electricity plan, check out TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF for the best options available. They say hook 'em to Longhorn fans out there. Hey, let me ask you guys this. We talked early on, CJ, you talked about Alex January dropping 10 pounds and Colin Simmons adding 15 or so. Where do we want to see these guys at? Like, where do we want to see Alfred Collins at? Where do we want to see Jere Bledsoe at? That's one of the ones that's important to me. Vernon Broughton. Any thoughts on those guys?
I think right now, I was actually surprised at how big Alfred got to coming into this past season. I think he was right around 317, maybe even 320. To me, I was, I'm thrilled with how big they are and how, you see the mass in person. You're like, it's going to be hard to move that guy out of the way. But maintaining that athleticism and flexibility more so than not with Alfred is going to be important for me because he's such a superb athlete. And what he does sometimes gets him in trouble a little bit on the field because of how athletic he is. I'd like to see Alfred right at 315. I think you can man that 3-tech spot and even slide outside to a 5 if necessary at that size and length and athleticism. That's going to be the spot for me. 315 feels good. I'd love to see Jere Bledsoe get up to 295. I don't know if that's too much of a reach there, but the closer I can get to 300 with him, I know that his athleticism is going to be in that conversation for pound, the most athletic guy on the team, which is crazy coming from a defensive tackle that really hasn't seen a lot of rotational time at the moment, but he's a freak athlete. I'd love to see him get to 300 because he's going to be able to carry that weight very well. Vernon Broughton, to me, I feel like could slim down a little bit, but if he's going to be asked to play the nose or slide in that nose spot, there's no need for it. I feel like he's going to have to be loading up specifically in the lower body for me. For Vernon Broughton, that was one of the kind of the question marks in his recruitment. Could he eventually build up a stronger, thicker base and play on the interior and maintain kind of that impact at the point of attack right there? So it'll be interesting. And then you obviously talk about Sadir Mitchell. I mean, we saw 360 handled well with Devondre Sweat, but That's not necessarily going to be the case for Sadir right away. I'd like to see him below 350 going into spring ball, just so you can know he is going to be able to move at the level of which you're going to be needed to in college now.
Hey, y'all may have talked about it. Where do y'all see Savea playing fitting in the scheme? I don't know if y'all broke that down.
A 3.
Technique. Yep. They still need a nose tackle.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was one of the interesting things whenever we dove into the numbers from his Arizona snaps. I think it was close to 80% of his snaps came at the 3 tech. The other, large majority came outside at a 5. So very rarely was it strictly over the nose or the center there.
Yep. Thanks for asking for clarification there, Jerry, because a lot of people just assume defensive tackle, one's interchangeable with another. Obviously, a lot of football fans know that's not true, but some still think defensive tackle is a defensive tackle, et cetera, when there's some nuance to it.
And by the way, Bobby, I want to say thank you for representing Matt Maloney and the Penn Quakers tonight.
Oh, this is for my daughter, my man.
I know, but hey, old reference, Matt Maloney. Come on.
This is my daughter.
He's the only player from Penn I could think of.
I'll tell you the best timeout. So I got to say this. Chuck Daly was the basketball coach at Penn before he went a couple other places, then went to the Pistons.
Damn.
He took Penn to the Final Four in the 70s.
That doesn't surprise me. I guarantee you they were the most physical team in the tournament.
Yeah. Rick Mahorn was not at Penn, though, guys.
No.
Hey, here, Jerry, let me ask you this from Gavin. Which basketball players do you see getting drafted this year for the Longhorns? Does Dylan sneak into the first round for his rebounding?
I don't think so. I think, look, he's projected mid-second round right now. I think he's 3 years away as an offensive player from really being a first-round offensive player. But I like the progression he's made this year. And he's just got to play stronger with the basketball as he continues to build his game. Too many unforced turnovers for me. No, I don't think he will be. I think what's going to be interesting, though, I think he's the only guy that gets drafted. Disu's injury history, he'll get into a camp. I think the interesting guy is Max Asmus. He's not going to be drafted. A lot of people say no chance he'll make the NBA. Well, I can tell you this. I think it's Memphis that has a 5'8" guy starting at point guard right now due to injury. There's bigger rosters now. Max is going to be interesting to see if he just wills himself onto an NBA roster somehow, some way. Probably be in the G League, be in a camp. He shoots it too well. He plays under control so well. He plays an NBA game with the spacing. You don't need breakdown point guards. You need guys that understand spacing. I'll be so interested to see if he just wills himself onto a roster. I mean, it's a different player totally. Jabari Rice willed himself on to the Spurs roster. I mean, he's not there right now, but those guys they tend to find a way to make a career in basketball. I think Max will do that.
Yep, the spacing is going to be huge for him.
Yeah.
Well, guys that can shoot like that are ridiculous.
Yeah.
They carry a premium if you can score. All right, Ski Breck, I'm stoked about the NFL draft and seeing all those Texas players going pro as we enter the SEC. Rod, I wrote something today about it. Rarely do you see a team that has 8 players going in the NFL draft. We're pretty sure at least 8 are going to go. But then the expectations for Texas next year are just as high, if not higher, despite all those guys going pro. What you always like to talk this, but from a player's perspective, you see those guys leaving, going to the pro, the Jaylen Fords, Christian Jones, and you happen to be a sophomore or junior on that team. What your eyes just get big as saucers and you're saying, I want some of that? Is that what you're thinking and kind of dedicate yourself to this offseason?
Wait, and not only that, right? You see the yellow brick road. It's right in front of you. You know that the coaching works, right? That's confirmed. The coaching works, the development works. It's confirmed Texas has the resources, and it's confirmed you got the talent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in that room. That's the pipeline I'm talking about. And all the guys can see it now. It's clear to them, and it will be confirmed when obviously we got a lot of guys drafted. I think Texas is probably going to dominate the second round of this draft. I think the second round of the draft will be a Texas dominated second round. When you think about it, the first round, they got A.D. Mitchell kind of dropping late in the first. Byron Murphy's rising up. He ain't worked out. He's rising up draft board. That's just people watching film. They're watching film right now about Murphy. That's why he's rising up draft boards. But when you think about JT Sanders and X-Man, I think AD Mitchell, because it's a deep wide receiver draft, deepest position in football at any level. So every year it's deep, but it's going to push AD Mitchell down a little bit because he's probably the 6th, 7th best receiver in the draft. Push him down to the 2nd round. And then I think T'Vondre Sweat's a 2nd round guy, but he, the way he performed at the Senior Bowl, man, it's a guy that potentially in the NFL, it all comes together, can be an elite D tackle in the NFL if it all comes together for him. So I think he's going to end up being drafted in the 2nd round too. I just think a lot of the guys are going to end up right around that 2nd round. I think you have 4 guys potentially drafted in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. That's a lot in one round.
I responded on Bobby's thread on ontexasfootball.com. If you count Bird Auburn, for the people saying, how Texas, will they be as good next year? 21 players I project to start that have started a Power 5 game next year for Texas. 21. And we don't know what they're going to do.
That's with 8 losses to the NFL.
That's right. That's why a blue blood in the portal has no excuse to ever say we're a young football team. You can't say it if you're a blue blood. Maybe if you go through a coaching change like Alabama just did, maybe a little bit. But if you don't, there's no excuse to be an inexperienced football team anymore at all.
Jerry, was that Jonte Cook?
No, Cam Williams started one game. The linebacker, what they're going to do with the other linebackers other than Anthony Hill. Gotcha. But, I mean, if you think about it, just think about it. Silas Bolden, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, Nye Black started a lot of Power 5 football games, right? Cam Williams has 1 start against K-State. He's the least experienced guy. But you go to the D-line. I mean, Savea coming in, if he starts. I mean, the guys play a lot of football at a Power 5 level in meaningful games. Makuba's played a lot of meaningful games. I mean, this is a team that has a ton of experience next year. And that's why I've said, because, I love punter talk. If they go with Michael Kern and don't go to the portal for punter, that tells you how high Jeff Banks is on Michael Kern, by the way.
Interesting, because that would be their only – that and we think defensive tackle. They need to add a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
They just have to. They don't have enough right now.
Yeah.
But punter is one of those that has a complete open spot because of Ryan Sandborn's departure. Hey, let me ask you all a couple. We got time for a couple more questions here, and I'm going to get through those. I'm going to let people go to the Grammys. Rod Babers, you got to go get ready for your surgery tomorrow. 4 wisdom teeth, my man. I'm not going to be you or your wife tomorrow afternoon. You have to be babying.
You'll be taking care of 2 babies. Yeah.
Take care of 2 babies. Yeah. Hey, this from Team Mattia. Do you guys think that the Texas staff finds the physical skill traits first, but then uses the mental and culture as the key differentiators? And is that one of the reasons why Steve Sarkisian doesn't like to push for early commitments made? Because that's one of the things that we've talked about, how OU's pushing because they kind of have to, we think right now. They don't have a lot of big momentum really, other than what they're generating on their own. What do y'all think of this idea that Sark kind of lets things play out because he wants to know a little bit more about the players themselves?
Look at how many guys they offered in January when they were out on the road. I really think that you're seeing Sark say we can get more guys on campus. We can evaluate more guys fully and further. The more guys, like the junior day, had 150 kids on campus. Now, some were 2026s, obviously, but that was as much of an evaluation day as it was a recruiting day. That's continued evaluation process. There's, Texas is a luxury position right now, and I know fans will. Some of the Texas fans, they see a Foji commit to OU. Oh, man. Well, yeah, Texas loves Ryan Foji. They're on a ton of really good offensive line prospects, and they want to continue to evaluate those guys. There's only 3 guys that I've heard are coming in for June official visits on the offensive line. That's Fasusi, and that's Tyler Thomas, and that's John Mills from St. Ignatius and San Fran. Those guys have told Texas they're going to come in an official visit in June. Texas is still looking at a lot of these guys. They want to evaluate these guys. I think that's such a great position for Sark to be in. He knows he can get more guys to campus, further that evaluation process. I've said that's where Nick had college football the whole time, is that he won at such a high level. He could get every kid he wanted to his campus. And when you can get every kid to your campus, then you evaluate off the film, but then you evaluate the rest of it when they're there. the people around them, the kid, how they are. You can put the quarterback on the board with the quarterback coach and OC. You can do so many things when you get as many kids to campus as you want. That makes it for a great evaluation process.
Hey, Rod, what about the mental and culture as key differentiators? You've seen it at the highest level. How big? I mean, is that just like, I guess my question for the way I see it is, it's not just kind of big. It's as big as anything at the very highest level, right? Now in college, it's kind of big, but when you get to the pros, that's all it is because they're all freaks. Is that kind of what you think?
No, I love what the person in the chat just said, because I totally agree. I think, and I've talked about this maybe on a more micro scale. Maybe they're talking about things like more macro, but you don't try to coach and develop coverage or pass rushing ability. You recruit it, you bring it in, and then you can teach them the other elements of the game, right? We can teach them how to take on blocks. We can teach them leverage. We can teach them all the basic fundamentals. But there's certain traits I think they're as the coaches, they are coveting right now. And I think physically coverage is one of them. I think pass rushing ability is one of those. But also there are intangibles. Right? There are some of these immeasurables they're also coveting. Sark talked about how he likes players coming from championship programs with championship pedigree, championship DNA, because I do think those programs, and I have to play against a lot of these programs. I think Houston Lamar's got a decent culture there football-wise as well, where they weed out bad football character or they rehabilitate it. Right. So if you only have good football character, you don't have great work ethic, you're not one of those guys that has a lot of mental toughness, that they can kind of weed that out. Or if you end up, working your way up through one of those programs like Duncanville, and Jerry just talked about it, DeSoto, some of these other programs, you got to have it basically molds your football character. And the guys that are coming out of those programs as elite athletes, that their football character has been cultivated to a certain extent where Sark knows I ain't got to teach them work ethic. I ain't got to teach them, leadership. I don't have to teach them about, being a good teammate, just certain things that usually you got to start from the bottom in terms of building a player up and creating and cultivating a football character. You ain't got to worry about all that. So I think Sark likes having a bit of an advantage, recruiting some of the players from great football programs, number one. And I think that's also something that they're recruiting more of. He likes that about, these young guys coming out. They've been a part of some championship DNA, and they got a little bit of it in them.
Can I add to that? I want to add to that real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Everybody talks about Nick Saban signing number 1 classes, number 2 classes for 15 straight years. And everybody talks about who he got. Think about how many players he turned down. Think about how many players he turned down that he didn't see as fits in to keep his culture and to keep his program where he wanted it, because he could get anybody he wanted in America for over a decade. So think about how much talent he turned down. I'll say that. The other thing, I think the biggest thing for Sark and this staff, now that and everybody has to go through this when you reach a certain point of level of success. These next couple of classes, they got to make sure they're not recruiting a lot of kids that just expect it to happen, that understand why it happens. That's the biggest thing, to Rod's point, and you guys, what y'all are talking about. It's the biggest trap coaches can get into is you're still assembling a team, not just collecting talent. That's always number one with these big-time programs.
And what did Jeff Banks say? Jeff Banks said, we're looking for signs. We're looking for signs. And if we don't see them signs, a lot of people are going to wonder why we didn't recruit that guy. Why didn't we close on that guy? Why didn't they go harder after that guy? They don't see the signs. To Jerry's point, that's what they're making sure they recruit the right type of attitude here. And if they don't see the signs of respect for teammates, respect for the culture, respect for the game, that kind of stuff, they're going to move on. Sark had a tweet today where he was, if I'm not mistaken, you guys look at his Twitter account where he's quote tweeting LeBron James, and LeBron James's rant. LeBron James is talking about materialism and how players are so focused on the money and the material aspect of their achievements. And LeBron's ranting about, worry about that. Focus on the game. Be passionate about the game. Devote yourself. Commit yourself to the game. And all that other stuff will take care of itself. And I think Sark was on there saying, listen. I think he said something like, listen, and all exclamation marks. But I think his point it goes to what he said about the type of players he wants. In the NIL transfer portal era, the free market has hit college football. Tougher than ever to build a positive, constructive culture. That's what he's trying to focus on. The guys who are committed to the game and not committed to what the game can do or bring to them or do for them.
There's another piece of this too. You got to have dogs. You got to have guys that. You got to have guys that will, eat steel.
Hungry dogs.
The best teams do. I'm just telling you. I've seen it time after time. Yeah, it takes all kinds to make a team and create a culture where, to Jerry's point, it's that ongoing thing that you're not getting too soft on the back end, and that's really what Jerry's talking about. Is developing a soft culture as well. It can be a good culture, but then if it's too soft, what's the value of it?
Amen,
right?
brother.
That's part of it too. All right, that's going to do it for tonight's live stream. Thanks again to TexasElectricityRatings.com. If you live in a deregulated city, give them a shout. Take a look at their website, TexasElectricityRatings.com. CJ Vogel, thank you very much. Rod Babers, good luck tomorrow, my man. And you are cleared to go to the Super Bowl, by the way.
I'll let y'all know.
He has cleared you, my man.
Rod's running the 4 hours.
Otherwise, Jerry's going to get you on a Greyhound. Jerry, thanks, man.
Hey, Rod, I'll drive you to Vegas if I can see some profit on the way.
We just stream the whole damn thing. Jerry driving Rod B to Vegas. That would break some records, brother.
That might do it.
I don't even want to know how fast y'all go in West Texas. All right, for you guys, thank y'all so much for being there. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. We got Coffee and Football. Blake Monroe hosting 8 a.m. in the morning. We'll see you guys. Hook 'em.